House rules. Each speaker has 5 minutes. The first and last minutes are protected. The judge will ring a bell to signal the protected time. The bell will ring continuously after 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, dear judges. My name is Guma Stephen Fisher, your foster farmer from Gombe Secondary School. So the resolution states that companies should be held legally and financially accountable for deforestation caused by their supply chain. It is imperative that we understand the definitions of the key terms in this debate. Companies means a business organization selling goods or services. Deforestation means cutting down or burning of trees over a large area. A supply chain basically means a series of processes involved in the production and supply of goods from when they are first made, grown, until use. And then financially means associated with money or finances, whereas accountable means expected to give an explanation for your actions. These are definitions sourced from the Oxford 10th edition Learner's Dictionary. So we are setting our parameters around Uganda. Why? Because from characterization, this is a low developing country. Being a low developing country means that it cannot have the financial muscle or the financial capability to actually switch to more sustainable and renewable sources of energy, such as the use of catalytic converters and carbon filters. What that then means is that the only contribution we have to green environment is our natural forest cover. So status quo tells us that 88% of Ugandans actually rely on wood fuel, according to the IMF report. We also know that Uganda, being a country that is heavily agriculturally based, or a country that whose backbone is actually dependent on agriculture, means that the agriculture it depends on is actually sourced from rainfall. And we know that deforestation distorts the rainfall cycle. When the rainfall cycle is distorted, that means that at the end of the day, agriculture is going to decline. So on principle level, you realize that we are very much justified to have these companies accountable. So our policies in that line are going to be, number one, legislation and regulation. Article 79 of the Ugandan Constitution actually gives us the mandate to formulate laws. And this is why we're going to use the Parliament of Uganda as our very first house. And then we are also, under the same mandate, we have the right to form new bodies or to implement new organizations. This is why we are saying that our second policy is going to be transparency and reporting, both by these companies and by the regulatory bodies. So these regulatory bodies are going to be the NEMA, Uganda Wildlife Authority, and the NFA. We are also bringing on board a new body called the Environment Court to handle cases of corruption, so that we can actually get transparency and achieve proper justification and auditing of these companies and how they cause deforestation from their supply chain. We are also talking about financial responsibility and legal action, where we're going to be advocating for sustainable energy. And under this, we're also going to be awarding punishments for companies that actually continue to defy our laws. So we are saying that we're going to revoke certifications for these companies, or we're going to revoke their certificates. We're also saying that we're going to make sure that they have compulsory afforestation programs, and we are also going to award temporary bans to them. My second and third speakers will build more on those. And then we're talking that our time frame is actually going to be a period of 4 to 5 years, where we're going to be handling different policies concurrently. We're saying that we're going to handle legislation concurrently. We're going to handle legislation concurrently with sensitization in the first year. And we're going to compile reports and audits as prosecution in the second and third year, whereas advocacy and funding for renewable energy resources is going to be done in the last 2 years, because we're arguing for two worlds. We're arguing for environmental conservation, and we're also arguing for sustainable economic development. This is why we're bringing on board progressive realization to tackle the issue of sustainable economic development. Realize that environmental conservation is actually an urgency compared to economic development, and this is why we have progressive realization as one of our policies. So to preempt team opposition's case, they might argue and say that laws have already been in place and failed, but at the beginning of this year, the president issued a directive to the Prime Minister Robin Anabanja to ban companies that have been involved in illegal timber exportation. By June 2023, 40 of these companies had their licenses revoked, and this means that the only problem is enforceability and implementation. This is why we are prioritizing it and making sure that we're going to be exceedingly urgent on the issue of environmental conservation to do away with such an argument, because we expect it. I beg to rest my case.
Resolved, companies should be legally and financially accountable for deforestation caused by their supply chains. Chimney Alpha Lawrence, St.J.Naggalama Secondary School, Naggalama. Their farmers came here and gave us the definition of companies that we didn't agree with. According to the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, Company Act 2013, Section 2, a company is an artificial person created by law that has a separate legal entity perpetual succession, a common seal, and has limited liability. They went ahead and gave their parameter as Uganda, because Uganda is a low developing country that depends more on wood fuel. We have other sources of energy. We have the hydroelectric power. We have geothermal energy as a source of energy. We also have solar energy. We can rely more on these than, actually that's why we are low developing, because you're relying more on wood fuel, which shows they're trying to support deforestation. Ladies and gentlemen, our house as the team negators is the United Nations Forum on Forests. It supports member states in building national capacities in forest financing and monitoring. Our parameter is the world in reference to Uganda. Why are we saying the world? Deforestation is a matter concerning every part of the world. We can't just say Uganda. When deforestation occurs in Uganda, it is going to affect all countries in the world. The effect is not going to be only in Uganda, but rather in all parts of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the ultimate question of this very important debate is, whom should we hold accountable for the deforestation? Whom should we charge the cost? Whom should we drag to court? How to have the forests protected is what we are saying as the team negators, and we are going to do this. Is it the companies or the organ mandated to enforce the protection? It is the government, ladies and gentlemen. It is the government that we should hold accountable for the deforestation in the world, ladies and gentlemen. The right button to press is none but the different governments of the different countries. The government is not playing its job because it is the one that is in charge of everything in the country. The companies do not lie in space. The companies are under the government, and the government is in charge of them. It decides how they are going to operate in the country. We can no longer trust government. I'll get to you. Statistics show that governments have been reluctant in enforcing the protection of forests. The governments, time and again, have leased out forested land. How are we going to trust them then? Pressure put on government can yield positive results, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, we have our work plan. I'll get to you. Agents, what are some of the agents of deforestation? They are companies, pastoralists, and subsistence farmers. But these people, their desire for forests is insatiable. They can't be there. That's why, as the team negative, we are saying we are going to rely more on the government. The state shall protect important natural resources. This is according to the Constitution of Uganda as amended in 2006. The state shall protect important natural resources, land, water, wetlands, minerals, fauna, and flora on behalf of the people of Uganda. Ladies and gentlemen, is it the companies to be legally and financially accountable for the deforestation in their supply chain across? Yet we have many people in the supply chain. And at what stage are we going to blame the companies? Are we going to blame the companies at the distribution stage of the supply chain? Are we going to blame the companies at the production stage of the supply chain? The farmers have not said any of these. They've not given us clarity. And as the United Nations Forum on Forests, we are going to force governments play their part in the conservation of forests through trade sanctions, through making them pay fines for failing to commit to their duties. And Chapter 15, Section 245 of the Republican Constitution. Thank you very much. As they are farmers, as the negators, we stay on our stand that the companies should not be accountable.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute.